What is going on, everyone? My name is Drew Spencer with the React and Attack Football Podcast, where we try and go over NFL content from all 32 teams every single day. And boy, oh boy, there's always something going on in the NFL world. And if you like what you hear, make sure to like and subscribe. And let's go. So, breaking news as Mike Tomlin, the head coach of the Steelers, after 19 seasons, is stepping down from being the head coach. Absolutely crazy. I wanted to get a reaction done last night after the game. So I'll just talk about that game. But first and foremost, gotta dive into this. Obviously, if you didn't know, the Steelers did lose quite horrendously to the Texans last night, where some people could say the game was close at certain points. I think throughout the third quarter, I think it was 7-6. And CJ Stroud and that offense did as much as they could until the fourth quarter to lose that game, but there was no semblance of anything. And so before I really get into that game, the Steelers were absolutely embarrassed at home. And if you look around the rest of the wild card weekend, I mean, so many games outside of that Steelers game came down to the wire. Um, you know, to compare and contrast a little bit here, the Panthers, who won their division in a very sloppy division, especially once the Bucks they blew themselves up essentially. Um, a lot of people didn't take them seriously, and a lot of people had, I'm sure the Rams fans out there were like, thank God we get to play them, right? Um, and instead, the Rams and the Panthers had a very good match, right? The Panthers at one point had the lead with just under 2 minutes left, and the Rams were able to win that game. And so, they can still hold their head up high simply because they were still in that game, even though everyone wrote them off. You look at the 49ers, who are so injured and completely depleted. Now, not at certain positions, obviously, guys like Brock Purdy is healthy and Christian McCaffrey. So you can't say everyone is hurt, but at the same time, you see these they go out and they get a win. And this is for the Steelers, they have been doing the same thing forever. And I'm sure Steelers fans know this. I'm not trying to, bring something new to the table here by saying this, but at this, they have just been absolutely stagnant for so long. And at certain points, because there's been so many Mike Tomlin defenders over the years, and again, before I preface this too much, I don't think he's a bad, terrible head coach, but they have been in the same rut for so long since Tim Tebow bounced them in Denver all those years ago. This team, when it had talent brimming from the top to bottom, when Ben Roethlisberger was in his prime, along with Antonio Brown before he lost his head, he was a really good receiver. Le'Veon Bell as well. The Killer Bees, they had this great defense, the remnants of that team. You still had some veterans in there. And here they are. They haven't won a playoff game since, I believe, 2016. And the three quarterbacks that they beat were an Alex Smith led Kansas City Chiefs team, which, this was before we understood the Chiefs is what they are now. A Matt Moore led Dolphins team. And, oh gosh, there was one more. Either way, the guy's slipping my name because I think it was another kind of backup quarterback that was thrust into the game against them to try and win. And you can't hold your head up high on those, despite saying, "Oh well, we've made the playoffs year in, year out." Even though it's very nice to, have these seasons of getting into the playoffs, having winning records to hold your head up high on. And I know there's some teams, and I'm sure Steelers fans for so long until probably the last few years or so probably held that to the, it's like, well, we at least make it to the playoffs every year. Yeah, dude. I mean, sure, there's are plenty of goddamn teams out there. The Jets, who haven't sniffed the playoffs since back then, before Tim Tebow. Obviously, you look at teams that have just been perennially kind of dumpster fires for a long time. The Browns come to mind. I know the Cardinals have come to mind. But here's the thing: at least, and again, it really stems from your front office, your ownership, your culture of the team, the hopefully getting the right head coach. There's a lot of different variables. So just by being, oh, we need a bad season or so, doesn't mean with the number one overall pick you're going to turn your franchise around or anything. And you could stay in these really bad situations. And I think that's where Steelers fans have been so afraid to admit up until probably the last few years because of how redundant this team has been, where they win 9, 10 games and then they get their asses kicked in the first round nonstop. Um, and, you know, here's the thing though, at least sometimes, look at Jacksonville, for instance. Jacksonville was completely mocked. And I know they didn't win their playoff game, but they have brought in guys. They have taken chances on these coaches, and they're not staying stagnant with the scheme when it's obviously not working. The biggest detractor I have about Mike Tomlin is not him as a head coach. I think you listen to Aaron Rodgers' press conference last night, which very well could have been his last one in the NFL. And the reporters trying to grill him and stuff because everyone wants to know who's going to get fired and all that kind of stuff. And Aaron Rodgers is out here defending him. And regardless of what anyone thinks about Aaron Rodgers, he's been in the league for a damn near long time. He has an ego and stuff, and yet here he is going to bat and saying, no, like, this culture is great, everything there. And I do think Mike Tomlin is a good coach in that sense. He had to deal with Antonio Brown being a head case, Le'Veon Bell being a head case as well, multiple guys. And I know eventually it leaked out of the surfaces and you couldn't contain anything. And sure, just because he could control the locker room in that sense, it wasn't amounting to playoff victories. So some people and Steelers fans might be like, well, it doesn't matter. No, it does. I think he is a great coach. I think now that Mike Tomlin stepped down, who knows if he's going to vie for another position in the NFL automatically or take a year off, or who knows. Honestly, the sky's the limit. He can get a job somewhere because I do believe he can build that culture setting. But the biggest problem Mike Tomlin has had is he's been terrible at finding the coordinators. For years, it was, for Steelers fans, I'd see fire Halfley, fire Canada, fire, Terrell Austin right now as defensive coordinator, fire, name the guy. And yeah, the scheme is stagnant. They have kept players well past their prime to pay them. And look, I get it. I'm a big fan of that stuff too. You don't want to just move off of guys that have been your fan favorites, guys like Cam Hayward, for instance, and TJ Watt. But you look at some of these moves and nothing is for the future. It is all about, hey, what can we do here and now and try and win? And again, making the playoffs, having winning seasons, there's plenty of teams that would want that. But what's the point of getting to that, climbing that mountain and realizing that once you get in, you're not matched. You are completely outmatched, completely in every sense. Even last night, again, the Texans offense was trying to hand the game away, and neither side of the football for the Steelers did remotely anything. And when you can't continuously find good coordinators to help, and you know not able to expand the scheme, do new things. I mean, this offseason, them going out and getting Aaron Rodgers and trading for Metcalf was like probably the most non-Steeler thing we saw. and it still resulted in this because what is their plan? Their their plan is always okay, well our plan we know what we're doing this year. Yeah, but what are you doing in 2028? Are you just going to keep kicking the tires on these veteran quarterbacks? Are you going to go after Kirk Cousins or Kyler Murray? Is that kind of the case? Is there a chance to move up for a guy? There has been a lot of opportunities over the years for the Steelers to try and do something, but they've only cared about this upcoming season. And sure, they can rip off maybe 10 wins and, you know, win their division and say, hi, we got you guys. Yeah, you guys won the AFC North with Lamar and Joe Burrow basically out half the season. And now I'm not trying to say that those teams in particular would absolutely have crushed it, but you got to imagine both star quarterbacks going down kind of hurts both those teams' chances. And the Ravens, it comes down to that, man. The reason why Mike Tomlin stepped down, or I'm sure it was more mutual. We're not going to fire you, man, but we want you out of here. And the resigning, but the Ravens fired John Harbaugh, another very similar coach in every aspect. I mean, their stories can't be told without mentioning one another between John and Mike Tomlin because of how many games they played against one another. And once the Ravens realized, hey, look, we may have injuries as the excuse or whatever, but we can't even get past this team. This ain't working. And it was looking like the Steelers were not going to make any moves about Mike Tomlin until this news happened just now. And it's absolutely absurd. Not shocking though. I think it's hard to say who's going to come in and can the Steelers get this? Can they go back to the playoffs and within a year, or do they need a massive teardown? And it's I think what they need is this: they need a good offensive minded head coach in there and be a little bit more new wave with their approach. And I have a lot of respect that the Steelers organization has so much patience for their guys and a lot of camaraderie. And I do believe it's Mike Tomlin leaving that locker room is going to be largely missed. I do absolutely understand that. But again, the scheme this has been stagnant, and that's been their standard, unfortunately. And they need a breath of fresh life. They have a lot of aging talent, guys taking up money that were brought in to win right now, or at least I guess make the playoffs and win right now. You got to move off these guys. You got to shed the cap. It's gonna suck. And I know Steelers fans, I'm sure plenty of them are like, yes, yes, we did it. But I mean, it does suck having massive losing seasons. And then you got to hope that the coach you hire is the right one. Otherwise, you can make that move and end up like the Niners that were in 2015 and 2016 with horrible head coaches and no direction. And thankfully, we ran into Kyle Shanahan. But that doesn't happen for every team. But should that stop teams like the Ravens or Steelers trying to move off of coaches who haven't had as much success in the past 10 years as these other guys? Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, the NFL is about, not for long. That's what it stands for. And what have you done for me lately? And it happens to everyone. It happens to every single. Bill Belichick was fired by the Patriots. Tom Brady wasn't resigned by the Patriots. I mean, Jerry Rice didn't finish his career with the San Francisco 49ers, nor did Joe Montana. I mean, it's just so many things like this where this is not the first time, and it's sure as shit won't be the last time. And they needed to make the move. I don't know where they go from there. It'd be funny to me if they bring in Kevin Stefanski. I again could be at least a move in the right direction, getting more offensive minded guy, and things just need to change. Especially with how much money they've invested, and while they're at it, maybe they should look at their GM and make sure that things are going. I don't think he's been done a terrible job, but I do think spending so much money for this veteran roster just to win in the moment is just always dumb. Always dumb. You should always have plans for the future. Otherwise, you're going to get this, and these are the results. and it was just time. Same with the Ravens. Um, just time for them. As for the game, as we know, the Steelers did not do well from everything I've said, but to see Aaron Rodgers' potentially final pass in the NFL go as a pick six is pretty shocking. Considering he's been so good at avoiding turnovers in every way, and he ends his postseason career in terms of wins and loss 11-11, and it just goes to show how hard it is to win playoff football games for any team. But even when you have a star quarterback, right? But um, yeah, it's crazy to reminisce on it, and if it is indeed Aaron Rodgers' final year, I mean, he's without a doubt a first ballot Hall of Famer. Absolutely one of the best throwers of the football I've ever seen. I'm really glad that the Niners got to stop him a few times from achieving a bit more, but um, yeah, crazy. But as for the winners of the game, the Houston Texans, I've had the Houston Texans jotted down to win or be in the AFC Championship game since like week 10 or 11. Once I found that stat where D'Amico Ryan's in this defense and has held at one point, there was like 8 or 9 straight games where they held a quarterback to under 200 passing yards. That is just unheard of. Incredible. Doing it against every offense that comes your way, against every tier caliber of quarterback that you're thrown against is impressive. And you know what? CJ Stroud and that offense, as I alluded to earlier, you know, 6 fumbles, 2 of them were lost, a pick. He had a he had a couple other big turnover worthy balls. He threw that hospital pass to Nico Collins, who goes down with a scary concussion where he's carted off. And that is such a massive loss, considering how good he's been for this team, and really this offense needing someone. And I don't know why they turned away from the run game for so long when it was ripping off, and when CJ Stroud was playing bad. And it wasn't just them; it was just like missed botched snaps as well. The offense just looked terrible, and yet that defense, it didn't matter. And sure, the Steelers offense was pretty anemic last night, but a lot of that was due to just how much they kicked the ever living shit out of that offensive line and that team in general. Um, Aaron Rodgers had pressure in his face. I mean, you're looking at 2 insane edge rushers in Daniil Hunter, who took over the game last night, and you have Will Anderson on the other side, who is an absolute freak of nature as well. Those two coming up, and then you have guys in the defensive line, like interior, like Danico Autry, who's just been a certified dog forever. Just one of those players that goes under the radar, who can just you know be a run stuffing eater and give you some pressure up the middle. And yeah, it was fun to see. And then you have the linebackers flying around. You have former Niner Aziz Al-Shaair, fucking how he's been commanding that. These corners. Kamari Lassiter is perfect. He's probably the best nickel in the league just because of his instincts there. Maybe not the best nickel, but I mean, he's up there, man. His willingness to just fly in and make tackles and break up plays, and he knows how to lurk. There was a play that the Steelers got. It was a positive play for the Steelers, um, but they ran the misdirection, and I know that this goes against the Texans. But Kamari Lassiter, if Aaron Rodgers had gone for the deep shot, the deep post to DK Metcalf, I'm pretty sure Kamari Lassiter would have just picked it off or broken it up. So he that defense is so well disciplined, and they got 2 defensive touchdowns off of them. And the offense, again, Texans offense was so bad. It was like, hey, dude, like they just score a field goal, this game's over. And that's essentially what it was. But then in the fourth quarter, things started getting going for them. CJ Stroud started actually making some better throws when it mattered, especially after that big, towards I think the end of the third quarter to Christian Kirk. That started to jumpstart the momentum of that offense, where eventually they were able to take it away. But this defense is a nightmare to play with. Probably the scariest defense in the league outside of maybe Seattle. Um, I honestly like they're a team that no one wants to play. But the problem that I have with Houston is I've held a bit more respect for their offense to be like, okay, if they play like this again against New England, no shot, no shot. They will make you pay with it. And New England didn't play a super offensive heady game themselves, but I just have a little bit more faith because what the hell was that? But either way, this Texans defense absolutely stunning, absolutely menacing. They got a good shot heading into Foxborough. It's going to be a tough one. You got to make sure that hopefully Nico Collins, I know that concussion looks scary. I don't think he's going to be there, unfortunately. Just got to hope that CJ Stroud can, shake off whatever the hell that was and rely more on this running game because it was working. It was getting going, and then they kind of turned away from it. So, uh, be interesting to see. And yeah,